Okay. Yes. Hello and welcome. I'm Sukendu Das, speaking on behalf of Center for Research in Post-Humanities. I'm going to coordinate this session, and our speaker is Adam Flores. He's a doctoral candidate at ELT, Doctoral School of Philosophy. He is a philosopher. Title of his paper is Graham Harman's Non-modernist critique of modernity. I welcome Adam. Now the virtual stage is all yours.
Thank you so much for the opportunity to present at this fantastic event, and it is very encouraging to see so many participants at this post-humanism conference, and so I am very grateful for the opportunity. I will do a share screen. Okay, so this should be it. Okay, so the topic of my presentation will be Graham Harman's non-modernist critique of modernity. It basically outlines what non-modernism is and what Harman's thinking is about this topic. So what are the key points which I want to address today? Firstly, I will talk about how the sociologist Bruno Latour has been a key inspiration for Mr. Harman's work. I will also see what Harman thinks about Latour's work. I will mostly deal with Graham Harman's book about Latour entitled Prince of Networks. This basically outlines what Harman thinks about Latour. And then I will address what I think non-modernism is. So firstly, a few words about Bruno Latour. Latour was basically a sociologist of science. He is an interesting example of someone who's founded or a co-founder of science and technology studies and actor network theory, along with other sociologists. These two, SDS and ANT, these have become very influential paradigms in sociology. Today I will mostly focus on actor network theory and how it relates to Harman's work. What is actor network theory? This is an approach which says that society is basically made of networks of relations. This means that nothing exists inside of itself, only in relationships. All the factors which influence society should be taken into account. Actor network theory deals with objects, humans, ideas, processes, anything which has any sort of effect on anything else. An actant, Latour's concept of an actant is anything which has an effect on anything else. So anything which is socially relevant. Latour's most famous book, I think, is We Have Never Been Modern. This is the most widely cited work from Latour. Other famous books by Latour include The Pasteurization of France, Pandora's Hope, The Politics of Nature, and Reassembling the Social, among other works. So he was a very prolific author. Okay, so why does Latour think we have never been modern? Firstly, Latour thinks that modernity is this idea, basically can be summarized by the idea that there is no big difference, that there is a huge difference between culture and nature, or society and nature, that these two things are somehow separate. This is the modern belief. Culture would be the social, the human, the subjective, the values. And nature will be the scientific, objective, material dimension of facts. And these two things are separate for the moderns. And Latour thinks that sociology and politics have been too focused on humans so far. And to be modern is basically to be anthropocentric. Latour thinks that the moderns sort of purify reality. They think that nature is somehow out there, outside of nature, outside of society. And non-modernism would be the recognition that this has never really been the case, that society has never been something separate from nature. These two are sort of hybrids. And the paradox of modernity is that basically the moderns, while they imagine society to be something separate, they sort of always constructing new hybrids at the same time. They maybe don't realize it, but they're always constructing these hybrid forms of reality. Like you can think about genetic modification, for example. Genetically modified organisms are an interesting example of how the natural and the social are intertwined with each other. And this is Latour's famous diagram of how we should interpret this. The moderns think they are purifying reality, while in reality they are constructing new hybrid networks through industry, through biotechnology, things like that. So we've never really been modern, and basically the moderns are unwittingly constructing new hybrids, the non-human. Cultural nature boundary is producing new monsters, new hybridities. So the moderns also believe that this is also Latour thinks that the moderns have, according to their self-image, they think that they have gone beyond the past, that we're progressing. There's progress. The moderns imagine that there is such a thing as progress. And also the anti-moderns, they sort of switch this around and say that the people who are against modernity, they say that this is sort of a decline. So that there's either progress or decline, but there's a direction in history. Yeah, and Latour thinks that both of these ideas are sort of mistaken. Okay, so there are several paradoxes in modernity. That we think that is sort of nature is a non-constructed realm, which is objective. Society is subjective. We can freely construct society any way we imagine. Also that, but then we realize that nature is artificial, and we're sort of doing more and more things with nature, while society is becoming ever more alienated from humans. So this is Latour thinks that the moderns cannot solve these paradoxes, and we need to go beyond modern ways of thinking. But how do we go beyond? That's the sort of the question. And the moderns believe that we can somehow change society according to our own subjective values. So these are Latour is very interesting in that he says that postmodernism is not really a solution to this. The problem with the postmoderns is that they remained too modern, that they sort of they kept too much of modernity. While, for example, the word itself, postmodern, it implies a sort of going beyond the past. This is Latour's main problem with the postmoderns, is that if we're going beyond something, we're still modern. The moderns believe that they were going beyond the traditional. That there's somehow a progress in history, and that the past, we're going beyond the past into the future. That's like the modern way of thinking about time. And the postmoderns, according to Latour, are sort of too stuck stuck in this way of thinking. So we're always going beyond the previous. This is not the way forward. If we have to go, even this very language of going forward, backward, this is something which we need to go beyond. The postmoderns are also not a real solution, according to Latour, because they are too stuck in a sort of culturalist or constructivist way of thinking about society. We're thinking about, they were very language-centric, many of them. Although we have to differentiate between different authors. So this is more complicated than this, but let's just skip. Okay, so what would non-modernism be according to Latour? Well, basically, it's the recognition of the idea that society and nature have never been separate. This does not mean we have to reduce one of these to the other. It is not about everything is just natural. That's not what Latour is talking about. We have never abandoned the tradition, or we never gone beyond the past. And so non-modernism would be the abandonment of the nature-culture distinction, and also post-anthropocentrism. However, it must be emphasized that Latour does not talk a lot about what he would like to replace modernity with. He does believe that post-anthropocentrism is a very important part of this. For example, Latour has talked about this concept called the Parliament of Objects, which is basically a replacement of democracy with a new form of political representation, which would include non-humans in basically legislation. So people there will be experts representing the interests of non-human agents. So it's a very different from representative democracy, which is one vote, one person, one vote. I guess that's the. So this is a very a different kind of political system, but Latour never really elaborated on this to a great extent. So the Parliament of Objects will be a sort of a non-modern way of thinking about politics, but Latour didn't write a whole book on this or anything like that. But so it must be emphasized that non-modernism is still taking shape. Now, I won't go into all of the details due to time constraints, but Latour has been a big influence on Graham Harman's work. Harman has written, I think, 2 books to date about Latour. And what is interesting about Harman's reading of Latour is that Harman interprets Latour as a philosopher, so as a metaphysical thinker, which is strange because Latour was a sociologist. So basically, Harman says that Latour is an actualist and a relationalist. So what do these mean? Firstly, actualism is the idea that only the present exists, only the present matters. Something matters when it exists in the present. That's it. Relationalism is the idea that there are only connections matter, only relations matter. There's nothing inside an object, which is there's no substance or essence. There's only the connections an object makes. That's what I am. Like the friendships I make, the professional connections I make. That's who I am. There's no me inside here. That's what a relationalist view of the world would be. So Harman basically tries to summarize the main points of Latour's work. Everything is immanent. There is no essential inner core that lies beneath the accidents of the moment. All actants, actant is Latour's word for something which exists, so an object or a subject, whatever. An actant is always deployed in the world, writes Harman. Sorry. So there's nothing beyond connections. That's what Harman thinks that Latour is talking about. An object is not a substance, but a performance, so that we can't really talk about what an object is in itself, what an actant is in itself. It's only the connections which matter, the networks, basically. So basically, the non-modern would be the recognition that that there's not a duality between culture and nature, and that, as Harman explains, Latour is a non-modern. There has never been a radical break with what came before. But this is the difference between Harman and Latour, is that Harman very much believes that there is a sort of substance or inner essence of objects. But the two of them are the same in that regard, that they are against modernity. They are against a sort of radical difference between humans and things. As Harman explains, we must liberate politics from the narrowly human realm and allow prions and the ozone hole to speak as well. So this is what a sort of rough outline of what non-modernism would be. A sort of anti-Kantian counter-revolution. Harman believes that Immanuel Kant was a very bad influence on philosophy, because Kant divides the world into human access, which is the phenomenal, and the lack of human access, which is the noumenal. Now, basically, I'm not going to go into all of this detail. This would take up too much time. But basically, so in Latour's work, actants are defined by their relations. And this is the point of difference between Harman and Latour. Basically, relationalism is not enough, because an actant, well, there's always something beyond relations. There's always an inner aspect. There's always an inaccessible aspect of an object. And Harman thinks that it's Latour goes too far. He takes actualism too far and relationalism too far. And we need something beyond relations in order for an object to exist. I'm not always deployed by my relations. I'm not always working. I'm not always doing something. Sometimes I'm resting, for example. Sometimes I'm not doing anything, and I'm sort of withdrawing from the world, I guess. And Harman thinks that this is true for all objects, that if we say that something is just its relations, how does something change then? How does change exist in the world if there's nothing beyond outside relations? This is the philosophical dilemma of this issue. This is the point where Harman diverges from Latour, because there is something. Harman says that there is a sort of inside of objects. This is again a sort of a diagram of what Harman thinks about the world. A real object for Harman is something which is hidden from access. It's inaccessible, like a black hole or something. This is the part. The real object is the part of an object which is not accessible to other objects. The sensual object, on the other hand, is something which is deployed in relations. It's the relational aspect of an object. So the real object is the substance, and the sensual object is the relation. This is, I guess, this is what the real and the sensual means in Harman's model. This is very different from Latour. So they think politically, they're very close. Both of them are non-moderns, but Harman is very different in the way he sees the world, nevertheless. This is a sort of example of Latour's model of the world, or how Latour thinks about the world. This is an example of an actor network. This is sort of a health, from a paper on healthcare. And we can see that actor network theory, it's not a sort of it's a very different idea. It's a horizontal view. Every actor matters in some way, and it's always about the relations between the actors, so that there's medical equipment, paper, technology, patients, everything, healthcare professionals, and all of these are very important, but all of them make a network together. And this is we're not really that much interested in actor network theory. We're not interested in what the actor is in itself, but the way it connects. That's the difference between them. This is a big topic, and I want to go into this. Let's talk about this for a little bit. So both Harman and Latour, they call themselves non-modernists. What does this mean? Harman says that triple O, this is his name for his philosophy, it cannot be sympathetic to human-centered politics because basically politics is about what humans are doing to each other. And Harman believes that modern politics is too anthropocentric. It's not about the world as it exists in itself. And also, he says that knowledge claims underlying modern politics are also unsustainable. We don't really know what things are in themselves. This is one of Harman's key points. Also, he says that there is only one exit for modern philosophy, and this is the rejection of ontotaxonomy. Ontotaxonomy is basically Harman's complicated word for saying for this human culture distinction, human and versus nature distinction, or the society versus nature. This is again the same thing which Latour is talking about. Harman has adapted this from Latour's work. So this is distinction between human thought and the world. This is the thing which we need to go beyond. We need to go beyond this sort of modern dualistic way of seeing the world. So this is Harman believes that, well, sort of rejection also of reductionism, which is the idea that we can sort of find a basic level of the world from which everything else is caused. But I won't go into that in too much detail. So the point is that sort of the human access versus the lack of human knowledge, these two things are very, these two dualisms need to be, we need to go beyond them. But this is where I do not agree with Harman. He says that the only exit for modern philosophy is to cease conceiving of the thing itself as something unknowable to humans, and to reconceive it as the excess in things beyond any of their relations to each other. Basically, what is Harman saying here? Harman is basically saying that the only true non-modernism is his own form of metaphysics. And I think he goes too far here, because I think also there's many other possible forms of non-modernism. So we don't have to agree with Harman's philosophy in order to be non-modern. As I mentioned at the end here, several Indian thinkers, for example, who are, I think, non-modernists. For example, Ashish Nandi has talked about critical traditionalism, which is this idea that we can have some elements of previous traditions and religions, but with a sort of integrating modern perspectives as well, because non-modernism is not anti-modernism. This is very important. Latour talks a lot about how he doesn't want to be an anti-modern. Anti-moderns are like reactionaries who want to destroy the modern world. The modernity is bad. We have to go before modern. We have to go back before modernity. That's what anti-moderns say. Critical traditionalists would say that there are maybe aspects of religions and traditional spirituality which have to be saved. or which can be adapted to our contemporary situation, but in a critical way. So using insights from critical theory, for example. That's what Nandi has done over these years. There's also Vandana Shiva, for example, who integrates ecofeminist perspectives with Hinduism, I believe. There's also various anthropologists who have been studying, South American traditional ways of living in the world. So I think Harman is a little bit exaggerating when he's saying that only his specific form of metaphysics is the only way out of modernity. I think that's a little bit too much, but I would say that there are various non-modernists who are working towards the same goal, but with different cosmologies. So for Harman, an object is noumena, which is noumenal for each other too, and not just for us. So that Harman is very much a substantialist. I believe that we do not have to be substantialists in order to be non-modernists. So yeah, that would be my concluding remarks. Thank you.
Insightful talk. So I open this session to question, answer, and observation, if there is any. Okay. So thank you, Adam, for being with us.
Thank you.
Your lecture is recorded and it will be archived on our CRP YouTube channel, and I will forward the link to you. Thank you very much for being with us.
Yeah,
Sir,
thank you.
Since you are here,